Our space. Thank you, everybody, for your beautiful words through song and through reflection. And I do hope that each and every day we're reminded of that refrain that Juliet used about your beloved and you matter. I think that that is just such a beautiful thing to remember. And I hope that we can be the type of people that not only remember that in our own hearts and in our own consciousness, but it's the thing that we bring into our space in our world. That every person we encounter in our communities know that they matter and that they're beloved. And I can't imagine a different place in our community that celebrates and inspires a positive spiritual life than to bring that into our space in our community. So grateful to be back here in Tahoe. As Marissa has told everybody from our travels that we took recently, yes, Scotland and Ireland and England and all the places where were beautiful, but there's really just no place like Tahoe. It just really isn't. So I missed you all. I'm glad to hear that the showcase went well. I'm glad to hear that the workshop last week with Saban went really well, and just happy to hear those things. But also knowing that there are people in our community that are struggling. Annie mentioned a little bit about Layla and what they've been going with their family, and just wanted to lift up Ryan and Rachel and what they've been navigating in their life. And I know that there's other people who have been doing the same. It's so good to see Donna back. And just, I know that there's a lot going on in our world and within our individuals in our community, and just know that you matter and you are beloved. And we hope that we can continue to inspire that in each and every one of us. A couple of things before I talk a little bit this week about building resiliency and traveling mercies and things like that. I just want to say that I would like for today to be the last day that I continue to remind you that we have a survey out that we would love to hear from you all about our study. And so if you have any input that you would like to add, we do have a form that you can use online or here in person, and we would love to hear from you all. And just know that today's the last day for that. We have a council meeting on Tuesday, and we would love to kind of finalize our plans for our next Unity study together. Also, if you haven't yet, make sure to sign up for the Chips and Chat. I'll be starting setting up those times this week, and want to invite you all to be in community together as we just have a conversation informally about our lives and what's going on, and just wanted you all to get to know me a little bit more as I get to know you as well. If you all didn't know, a few weeks back, there was a community event called the Lake Tahoe Documentary Film Festival that took place at Margaritaville. But during the documentary festival, there was over 70 films shown, and about a variety of topics and stories. And I just wanted to congratulate us as Unity of the Lake for being a part of that event. If you didn't know, we were a part of sponsoring a community screening for a film called The Paradise Paradox. And yeah, this is great. This is wonderful. It's a way for us to show up in our community, and just grateful for people like Angie Regan of Access Tahoe and Peace Love Tahoe, and bringing me along as well to help to advocate to have that film shown in our community. If you don't know about the film advocates for the difficulties of living in a town like our own. Small mountain towns have a lot of issues with mental health. And so this film is a way to show, like, yes, it's beautiful to live in those towns, but it's also, there's a difficulty and underlying hardships for people when it comes to mental health. And it highlights the beauty of those towns, but also the difficulty with that, and what communities are doing to show up for one another. And hosting that community screening, which ended up selling out. It was free to the community. It sold out. They also had a panel that discussed mental health and issues with that, and also had a mixer to kind of connect with those folks there. And I'm just so proud of Unity at the Lake for being a part of that event and being a part of the things that are going to come out of that kind of event. And that's one of the things I wanted to highlight with my messages the next few weeks, because as you all may already know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And a part of that is that we've advocated for a proclamation to take place in our city, which will take place Tuesday morning. And I want to invite you all, if you're available, to come to City Hall, which is by the airport here in town, to be a part of that proclamation the city will make that says that South Lake Tahoe is going to make this Mental Health Awareness Month. And there's a proclamation that many organizations and individuals have been a part of advocating for, and Unity at the Lake is a part of being named as a space that is advocating for mental health awareness as well. So come on May 5th to City Hall. We're starting with a little mingle and some snacks May 5th. At 8 a.m., and then the proclamation will take place as City Hall starts at 9 a.m. So you can come just for the proclamation, just to be present. And the reason why it's important for people to show up for the proclamation, we're not asking you to speak or do anything like that, but the reason it's important is because we want the city to know that this matters more than just saying that we're making this Mental Health Awareness Month. We want people to know, no, there's people in this town that want this to be something that is advocated for, something that is a part of the work that we're doing, and that we know that we got to do more. Because films like Paradise Paradox don't exist if there isn't a need for more awareness and more advocacy for those kinds of things in our town in place. So again, so proud of us as a congregation, as a spiritual community, showing up in our community in spaces like that. So thank you guys for being a part of that. And I hope to see some of you at City Hall on Tuesday morning. So with that said, there's a phrase that maybe you've heard before called, I hope that you have traveling mercies. And really, that's just a way of kind of expressing that you love a person who is going away for a little while, and you hope that their travels is enlightening and beautiful and wonderful. And I know some of you had traveling mercies recently, just like my wife and I had some traveling mercies. I know there's other people that got to have some vacation or did sort of some work, sort of some vacationing and things like that. But as I was traveling and had those mercies from you all, and I was thinking of this time that we were going to have over the next couple of weeks as I speak, I started encountering some lessons from our travel that I thought would be really interesting ways to talk about building resiliency in mental health. So for that, I'm going to use some lessons from traveling to Europe and the UK for our talk this morning. As some of you know, recently my wife and I, Marissa, and my mom and sister all traveled together to go to Ireland and Scotland and England. And as we traveled, there was a few things that came up that I thought I would use as a part of this talk. So we're going to use those as a basis to talk about building resiliency in our personal lives. As you may or may not know, people in Ireland don't drive on the right side of the road. I'm just kidding. They drive on their side of the road, which is not the same way that we drive here on a different side of the road. And the reason why this is interesting to me is because everywhere we went in Dublin, as we went around the city and you go to crosswalks and things like that, you would look down, and besides like having little street signs and things that tell you to walk and stuff, if you look down, it would tell you which side of the street to look. Which is interesting because you're in a place where everybody knows where people are driving, but because there's so many people like myself and visitors, they have to make sure that you're not looking in the wrong direction. They are so used to people just being like, oh, I'm going to look this way. Well, you should have been looking that way as the car runs you over as you go by. So every street that you would cross, they would look left or look right, telling you that you shouldn't look in the wrong way. And I felt like that would be a really good place to start, looking the wrong way. You all may be familiar with a concept known as masking or camouflaging or compensating. And that term is used to help name when individuals repress or hide signs of their mental health condition in order to blend in or to adapt to the neurotypical world that they might exist in, that they're not necessarily able to exist in the same ways. But that's not really the point I want to like harp on, because masking can actually be a positive way of interacting with this world. So I'm not really diving into that much. But what I want to say is that masking sometimes can lead to a little more unhealth. Not showing up as your true self into the world can cause lots of anxiety for people, and it causes lots of mental health exasperations. But as we'll discuss a little bit more next week, the burden of change, or the burden of trying to help people unmask, shouldn't be on the individual that has to experience the world like that. Society has a role to play to be more inclusive and accepting, and to create environments in which people can be their true selves. So we'll talk a little bit more about that next week. But all of us, though we may not have that as a coping mechanism to mask, all of us in some way, shape, or form have probably hidden or camouflaged or compensated at times in situations. I tend to describe myself as a shy extrovert. And what I mean by that is in social situations where I'm around unfamiliar people or unfamiliar places, I tend to present myself more introverted, or I may even seem to people as standoffish. But as I gain familiarity and comfortability, I tend to open up a little bit more. I think each and every one of you that know me a little bit more have seen that trajectory in me here at Unity, right? Perhaps the goal to not be to focus on right or wrong looking, but maybe it should be looking more in a different direction. Maybe that's a way to build a little more resiliency when it comes to our own mental health. And I mean that in my whole life, that has shown up in numerous ways. Looking in a different direction has changed my whole world. Marissa and I, my wife, we're friends for over a decade. She would say we were more acquaintances. I would say we were friends. But we would get together. I lived out of town. I was in Memphis for a while, and that's how we got to know each other. And then I moved away, and I would come back occasionally to see friends, and I would always like call up Marissa, and we would have a time to hang out. And we would discuss like the relationships we were in with other people and things like that. Like we were friends. And then 10 years passed, and it ended up, I started to look in a different direction. And me and Marissa, like, we are perfect for one another. And we found love and support that we hadn't had in other people, but we looked in a different direction and we found one another. Coming to Tahoe was not on the bucket list, y'all. I grew up in Tennessee, born and raised, never lived outside of that place. Loved Memphis with my heart and soul, still love that community and those people and those bonds that we had. But I knew at some point my vocational, like I had a career, but that career wasn't for me anymore. And I had to look in a different direction. And coming to Tahoe was not easy. It was difficult to leave that support and that family and that community. But what we have found here and continue to find here is so much love and support and beauty, obviously, that we want to be a part of this community so much. And looking in a different direction and coming to Tahoe's has been wonderful. Unity was not on my list. Being here with you all was not something when I showed up here I thought was going to be happening, but I had to choose because I was looking for an open spiritual space, and I found it in you all, and I'm so grateful that I looked in a different direction. So all of that to say, sometimes it is important to look in the right or wrong direction. When it comes to streets, you should look in the right direction. But maybe for just thinking about building up our resiliency a little bit more, the possibility of maybe looking in a different direction could be a lesson for all of us. When we were traveling in Scotland, we took some day trips from Edinburgh, and one of our day trips took us to a place called the Blackness Castle, which is just outside of Edinburgh, and it was on our way to St. Andrews, which I'm a golfer, so St. Andrews is sacred to me. And as we were traveling along the highway, just like we do here in the United States, there's many signs that kind of have like a safe driving direction. Most of the time here, it's more about like don't drink and drive and things like that. But in Scotland, I thought they had some kitschy, kind of like quirky little sayings. And one of the ones that stood out to me in particular, I thought was really interesting to talk about today, was frustrations can cause accidents. And I was like, huh, that's an interesting way of phrasing that. Frustrations can cause accidents. I mean, has frustrations ever got the best of you before? When I was a kid, I played football. I know, I'm sorry, sports. We'll get past it eventually. But when I was a little kid, I played football. And on my Pee Wee football team, I played lots of different positions, but I played defensive line at one point. And there is a point in football where the offense has the ball, and there is a center that has the ball, and he hikes it after a certain cadence is said by the offense. On the defensive side, you can't hit the person in front of you before that ball is hiked, right? So in Pee Wee football, I'm in the defensive line, and before the ball is hiked, I hit the person in front of me. So there's a penalty called on me, and that caused a little frustration on my end. But the problem was the frustration didn't end because I did it again on the very next play. And at this point, I'm beyond frustrated. I'm becoming embarrassed. Again, I'm a little kid. So I start crying, and I do the penalty again for a third time in the row. Frustration sometimes cause accidents. Has frustrations ever caused accidents in your life, in jobs, in your spouse or partners, in your friends? Frustrations with family, with systems, maybe with where you attend worship. Does it mean not to be frustrated? No, I think that's just a human emotion that all of us are going to experience. The thing is, how do we channel it in ways that help bring about becoming in the whole or lead us towards more health and healing? Learning from our frustrations and where they come from could be a way of enlightening our souls and ourselves and moving in a different direction. Don't let your frustration cause an accident. Pause, breathe, seek wholeness and health and healing. And ask yourself, when you're frustrated, where is this coming from? Is it something that deserves that attention and space and time in my life, or is it something about me that needs to be healed? The last lesson that I learned, or I feel like would be helpful for all of us, is while we were in London, we just happened to be there at the same time as the London Marathon. I brought this up earlier, and someone was like, "Were you running?" I'm like, "Oh God, yeah, I'm not. I'm not a marathoner, y'all. I'm not there yet." But the morning of the marathon, we had tickets to tour the Tower of London, and it just so happens that the Tower of London was kind of right in the heart of the marathon. So we took the London Underground or the Tube to go and to come back. And let's just say it was packed with people. I've never been in a tin can packed as much as we were. And my poor mother, I think, was about to explode with so many people near us. But we made it through. And all that to say, when we were on the London Underground or the Tube, as we approached each station, there would be a phrase that was repeated over and over and over again. And it just kept saying, mind the gap between the train and the platform that we were stepping on. Some of them were a lot wider than others, but mind the gap. Each of us, I believe, have to move towards our mindfulness of the gaps that exist in our health, because they are all interconnected. When our physical health is waning, it brings about mental health strain. And when our mental health is straining, it brings about issues with our physical health, let alone any kind of spiritual health, because it's all interconnected. And so I would just ask us, as we approach Mental Health Awareness Month, What are the gaps that are existing? And what can we do for ourselves and for one another to try to mine those gaps? Anne Lamott, who some of you might be familiar with or not, but she's a very, very popular spiritual author, mostly because she seems like the person who wouldn't be a spiritual author at all. And so, in her unique way of speaking and talking, one of the things she brings about talking about is a quote that I use this week in the newsletter, talking about the inner toolbox versus the tools of life. And she writes, "It's funny, I always imagined when I was a kid that adults had some kind of inner toolbox full of shiny tools, the saw of discernment, the hammer of wisdom, the sandpaper of patience. But then when I grew up, I found that life handed you these rusty, bent old tools: friendships, prayer, consciousness, and honesty. And it said, do the best you can with these. They will have to do." And I thought to myself, wow, that's a beautiful kind of way of considering life and the tools that we have at our disposal and the tools that are lacking sometimes in our lives. Friendships, prayer, consciousness, and honesty. And when I think about those four things, I truly think that is things that all of us show up for here at Unity. Friendships, prayer, consciousness, and honesty. Now, what other tools do you have, would you say, in your life that bring about the resiliency that you have found? Can you name any other tools beyond friendship, prayer, consciousness, and honesty that maybe you bring into a space or that you would hope to find? Compassion. Beautiful. Yeah. Laughter. Yes. Music. Yeah. Oneness. Yeah. Solitude. Great. Yeah. Time. Hmm. Humor. Yeah. Yeah. Empathy. Yeah. Food. Sleep. Yeah. Yes. I think there's like a saying like sometimes people are, at their wits' end, exhausted, but really the best medicine for them would just be a nap and a snack. Now, it's one thing to know these as an individual. It's one thing to know, like, what are our tools? What are the things that we need for our lives in order to build up resiliency and to be in a place that is positive in our health? It's another to use these tools and wake up to the idea that we're not just individuals, we are one. We are connected. And the truth is that we here at Unity and within our community and on this planet need collective tools for our mental health. And so my hope is as we continue this Mental Health Awareness Month and next week when we talk, we'll talk about these tools not as individual elements, but as collective tools that we can show up with and bring about to help our whole community and this world have more resiliency and traveling mercies, because each of us need it as we make this journey that's called life. So it is. Amen.